Greetings and salutations, everybody. I am back with a slightly different format here. For those of you who are new, I will drop these quick little items your way. First, I like to make these little videos about things that I enjoy and want to share, usually about film, most often horror, or some throwbacks to the 80s or 90s for some titles that I feel like maybe people just don't really talk about these days, see if they're actually still good and able to be enjoyed. Ones that have kind of fallen off the map. And I also try to only make videos about films that I enjoy rather than ranting about one that I didn't. I figure after all, even the worst film has its fans who enjoy them, so who am I to rain on their parade if the film just wasn't for me? And second, here comes the YouTube stuff. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and giving that little thumbs up and hitting that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put up new content, which is usually once or twice a week. Every now and then I work in a third one here and there. This way you can pop in during that first hour to check out the video, as that, along with checking out back catalog stuff, sticking around to the end and sharing the content around, really does help out the channel quite a bit. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, I'd finished that Hammer set that he did earlier this year. Then I finished the Hammer Dracula films that he did earlier in the summer. And I finished the Hammer Frankenstein stuff and revisiting both the Friday the 13th franchise and the Nightmare on Elm Street films franchise as well. So now I want to shift things a little bit. I want to get back to some of the films that I saw when I was just a wee lad back in the 80s. Ones that I possibly haven't seen since even those VHS days. So for this entry, I've revisited and highly enjoyed the Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and Ken Foree 80s Lovecraftian film From Beyond, released in 1986, and it's a very weird one, so here's a synopsis for From Beyond. Obsessive scientist Dr. Pretorius, played by Ted Sorel, successfully discovers a way to access a parallel universe of pleasure by tapping into the brain's pineal gland. When he is seemingly killed by forces from the other dimension, his assistant, Dr. Crawford Tillinghast, played by Jeffrey Combs, is accused of the murder. After psychiatrist Katherine McMichaels, played by Barbara Crampton, and detective Bubba Brownlee, played by Ken Foree, take the case, the trio risks a return to the other world in order to solve this mystery. Yes, that's a long one there, but I wanted to get one which is more descriptive. And let me also add, this is based on, a short story from 1920 by H.P. Lovecraft with the same name. So this is off the heels of another Lovecraft film and another favorite of mine starring both Combs and Crampton, which of course is Reanimator. We get this really weird follow-up kind of film. So I remember that I'd seen this, and dimly remember a scene of something being bitten off a person's forehead, but other than that, my memory was pretty much gone. So I went into this one relatively fresh, and it holds up for several reasons. One of them is we have this weird, sexuality kind of popping up within it, related to the effects that this machine has in the pineal gland. We also have a lot of gore, like really sticky, slimy, gross gore, some jumps in there as well, as far as like the horror aspect, and a very strong sci-fi edge to this film. I usually hear this one referenced as, more of just a horror film, but, and I used to think back on it like that, but I would say that this one kind of leans on the sci-fi first, then it kind of grosses us out and scares us a bit second to that, and then it lays in a lot of mystery with, of course, that sexual aspect kind of being in there in the background. But it's that mystery aspect that stuck with me the most when I was watching this. I feel it kind of helps the entire story along. After all, one can't just give you something weird, scary, gory, and sexy, as fun as all that can be, without a story to actually carry those themes. But, and the mystery, in my opinion, is the best way to get some engagement out of a film, at least for me. Even if there is a slow spot, if the mystery is enticing, I'm going to stick through those slow spots. And I stuck with this one and I enjoyed it entirely. This entire journey I enjoyed. Combs delivers as expected. He comes across as intense, smart, yet also troubled and traumatized. He does a really great job, being shocked from the experiences that he, went through earlier in the film and what he's trying to revisit with Barbara Crampton's character, which, she balances this intelligence and conservative and scholarly kind of image in some ways with this sensuality as her character is, kind of being affected by what's happening to her pineal gland. And that change in her performance throughout this film, it kind of reminded me of a similar shift in a character of hers as Anne in Jacob's Wife, which I'll put up a link to in the description, just came out about a year and a half ago. And of course, Ken Foree kind of comes across as like the level-headed character who's not as affected by what's going on. He's not traumatized. He's not having the sexualized kind of issues happening with the pineal gland. He's trying to kind of take hold of that situation and be, the level-headedness and the muscle behind all of this. But between the three of them, who occupy the vast majority of screen time, we get a really great balance of character types, pulling us along on this little journey. So outside of that, let me also add the effects in this. It was 86, so of course it was all physical, done in films like this back then. But not just amazing visual effects, the design was just simply disgusting. And I mean that in the best way, of course. It's really gross, really sticky. I'm convinced that Jeffrey Combs was likely never completely cleaned up until probably the late 90s, because that stuff must have just stuck to him during this role. But anyways, the reason why I'm really recommending this one is because it's a great throwback style of sci-fi and horror with some excellent performances, excellent effects, this mystery of what this machine opened, what it's revealing through this portal kind of into another dimension, what's been existing around us that we just can't see or feel or interact with, and how they're ultimately going to solve that situation. Who's going to make it out alive? Who's going to be blamed for murder? Is the world even going to be safe? It's a really interesting kind of story that they throw us into, and I think it's highly worth checking it out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this latest entry and sticking around to the end, as because like all that YouTube stuff, it really does help out a lot. Also on the end screen there, you're going to see a link soon for Jacob's Wife, another non-spoiler review for a film that I think was excellent. And Barbara Crampton did an excellent job in that, as did everybody in that. But anyways, thank you for popping by, and I will see you in the next one.